Hey everybody, Larry, Fort Worth Memories Museum and Groups. Let me find I think we're live on YouTube. The morning show has just started. There we are. Oh, that light is bright. Edit post. So today is Thursday, March the 20th. Let me style the video here. For being spring, it's kind of cool outside. So today is Thursday, March the 20th. Okay, and we're gonna share it. Gonna share it to the regular internet, share it to memories, live videos, and we're on YouTube, so you're on 4 or 5 channels right now, 5 different platforms. Let me tell everybody good morning. Good morning, everyone. Okay, Greg and Don are in, George is in, Aaron's in, Jeannie's in. Yeah, it's a little cool outside. The wind, I guess, is gonna be blowing again today. Well, this wind is unbelievable. John is in. John, what's the weather like up there in Wisconsin or Minnesota where you're hanging your hat today? But we go through this every year, so we're used to it, just like people up north are used to it. Wind has died down. Yesterday was terrible. John is in. Okay, so kind of a public address, public service announcement. Out in Springtown, the Springtown Area Senior Center has sustained lots of damage from the windstorms and all of that. So I posted it on the group. I hope that we can help out our neighbors. Any of our sponsors that can lend a hand, that would be greatly appreciated. So y'all are still getting snow in Michigan, and it's 31. Wow. But you know, like we're used to the heat down here, y'all are used to the cold up there. Anyway, the Springtown Area Senior Center is in dire need of help to rebuild it. So if you got a few dollars you can throw their way, or if you're a contractor of some sort and you can come to their rescue, it goes to a good cause. You know, that's what, if we all start watching out for each other, we'd be a whole lot better off than we are trying to be divisive. What else was I going to talk about this morning? Somebody asked me when was the last of the Hell's Half Acre era, and you know, I kind of put it, you Google it or talk to some historians, they say it lasted to the 20s. I don't think so. I think it was pretty much done by 1910 or 11. TCU, in fact, had their temporary headquarters down there on Commerce. Then it was called Rusk, and they moved out of there pretty quickly. So there were still remnants of it, but by 1912 or 1913, it was pretty much gone. There was probably a few bars and stuff left down there, but there was not all the prostitutes running the area. There were some, but nothing like it was in the late 1800s. So Hell's Half Acre kind of started about 1870. It was really strong in the 1870s. 1880s, it started phasing out. The reformists started coming to town. Women were getting more vocal in their communities, which was a good thing. In fact, there were several ladies that were in the women's suffrage movements that went around the countries to these saloons and stuff and basically caused a stink and would get arrested to bring attention to what they were fighting for. So, and then here in Fort Worth, Reverend J. Frank Norris, First Baptist, he really threw a monkey wrench into the prostitution and gambling and 24/7 and all of that in the early 1900s. He would preach his sermon on Sunday and then ask for 40 or 50 women to meet at the church on Friday evening around 7 or 8 o'clock, and they would march down to the Acre, because First Baptist was downtown also. They would march down to the Acre and make notes. If you were going into a house of ill repute, they'd say, okay, Mr. O'Neill, Maria will find out where you're going this Friday night at 8 o'clock. So they kind of single-handedly shut it down. But there was a lot of other contributing factors that did. The military was a big thing, because you could not have, when they built Camp Bowie, you could not have a house of ill repute or saloons or any of that within either a 1 or a 5 mile radius of the military installation. So that had a lot to do with it. But a big part of it was just the citizens here in Fort Worth. And the same person wanted to know about the feud between long-haired Jim Cartwright and Luke Short. Cartwright at one time was the marshal, sheriff, head police officer, but he was a bully, and so when he got voted out, he opened a business up, and it was called Jim Cartwright Investigations or Private Investigations. Well, that was just a hoodwink. He was selling protection racket. And Luke Short was one of the owners of the White Elephant Saloon. And Cartwright had come by there many occasions and said, you need to start paying, or your business here is going to suffer damage continually. And it just came to a head that evening, and Cartwright went for his gun. He was supposed to be pretty fast, not as fast as Luke Short. And also, Luke Short, in the 1892 voter registration book, which I have, stamped Fort Worth property, Ken is in, Luke Short lived at 404 Hemphill Street. How did I get those voter registration books? I bought 20 of them many years ago off of a Christie's auction, and I paid $3,500 a piece, $70,000. Big bound volumes, and they're stamped Fort Worth, City of Fort Worth. In fact, when Mike Moncrief was the mayor, George is in, they sent a representative over here wanting to know, well, how did you pay for those books? I said, look, I bought them on a Christie's auction. And Christie's, so Fort Worth followed it up. Christie's sent me an email a week later and said, City of Fort Worth, County of Tarrant County is trying to ascertain the seller to those books you bought, those voter registration books, and they had to have my permission. I said, sure. All I can think, all those courthouses back in the day were made out of wood. And so I can't imagine though somebody taking 20 of those books. Those things weigh about 20 pounds a piece. You would have had to make several trips. David's in, Bill's in. Good morning. So, but anyway, they're mine. They're the property of Fort Worth Memories. So, but that's the story. Long-haired Jim Cartwright, he had, after he was not the marshal anymore, he wanted to continue to ply his being a bully on the saloon owners down there in the Acre, and so he started a deal, and it was called Jim Cartwright Investigations, and he acted like he was a private investigator. He wasn't. In fact, he employed 2 of his ex-deputies, and they just went around to all of the bars and the houses of ill repute and said, you got to, protection, just like they've done all along. You got to kick up money to Jim Cartwright. Francis is in. And he ran up against somebody that had a quicker draw than he did. Yes. I had that here. Hold on. It's in the other room. I'll take a photo of it and send it to you, Terry. We've got 10 on the Metroplex and 56 on the South Texas feed. So we're rocking with about 70, 80 people at 7:30 in the morning. Yes, I will. K-Ranch Roofing is our roofing sponsor. The roof was blown off of that Springtown Senior Citizen Center. So I'm going to send a text to Jorge at K-Ranch Roofing. Let's read the sponsors while we're on here. Winstead Paint and Body. I've been doing with the Winsteads, been doing business with them 40 years, way before Clay owned it. I used to do business with his daddy. So they're a long time paint and body shop. They're on White Settlement Road, just about a block past Roberts Cutoff. And next up, Scott Sumner. That's our IT, our technical guru. Scott's the guy that keeps all of these platforms, TikTok, Instagram, X, Memories, YouTube. He keeps everything running. I don't know how he does it, but with the number, because we've got total in all the groups, we're over 200,000. So, but Scott gets it done. So if you need a website built or a consultation, all you got to do is message him. He is also the admin on some of our groups, but moderators on all of them. Come on, mouse. Alpha Design and Build, that's Lance Sanders. They are in the remodeling business, though commercial and residential. They'll remodel your house or put a second story on it. So you have to make the call, 817-229-1546. Lance will set up an appointment to come out and talk to you and figure out what you want to do, and he'll get back with you with a plan. Fort Worth Florist, Jeanette and her team, they're kind of way out on Camp Bowie, but you don't have to drive out there. You can do it all online. You can do it all on the internet. But you have to initiate the call to take care of your flower business. Funerals, weddings, just because they've been in business a long time. And when you're doing business with our sponsors, be sure and tell them you're a Fort Worth Memories member or use my name. That way they kind of keep up with it. I guess the internet's slow. G2 Garage. Chris and his team are in the White Settlement area. I've had several good reviews on them. Back when my truck was in the shop and I was Ubering it between here and the country, we were on 820 one day. He was taking me home. Not Chris, but the Uber driver was. And 18-wheeler had a flat, or you've seen those long strips of tire on the road. Well, it got up underneath his car, and there's a plastic shroud down there, and it just kind of destroyed it, and it was making a noise. And after he dropped me off, he went to G2 Garage, and they took care of it real quick. So Chris is the guy that runs that operation. I don't know why this thing is not. Feltz Family Auto Care. Mike Feltz and his family. I interviewed or talked with Mike and his wife here a few months ago. Great people. They're in the Burleson area. Everybody out there knows them, from Burleson area to Fort Worth. And they told me at the time they're going to open up a second operation out there in Benbrook. Stroud Auto Supply. Here again, I was doing business with that company when I was 16. Of course, I didn't know that was Danny Stroud's father, but they're in the Haltom City, Riverside area, and they are still rocking, going up against all these big national accounts, so they got to be doing something right. Be sure and go by there. They've got service is excellent. Schwartz and Hanson. Jerry Schwartz and his partner are our architect sponsors. They're also very active in the bicycle giveaway, Larry's Kids, and they've been a sponsor for years and years and years. Rex Benson, Rex's Bar and Grill. That's probably the premier sports bar in the Metroplex, maybe the state. I mean, Rex spared no expense on that deal. So it's March Madness. Go over there and have you some adult beverages and watch the games. He's got more televisions than a television store. Casey Crawl. I just got 2 messages overnight. Casey and his team are experts on Medicare and Medicaid. They'll come to your place. You can come to their place. They'll meet you in between at a restaurant, whatever. But they know that Medicare and Medicaid upside down, backwards, and forwards. Raines Plumbing. That's another family-owned business. We're big on family-owned businesses. We get great reviews on Raines Plumbing. Here again, you got to make that phone call. So if you've got an issue with plumbing, just pick up the phone and call Raines. They're happy to take care of you. Charlie Guerin's Railhead Barbecue. Charlie is on the board of directors at my bicycle giveaway, Larry's Kids. In fact, Charlie brought in tens of thousands of dollars last year for the giveaway. He was second bringing money in to me. He's also our state rep. His brother is Pete Guerin. He runs the Sid Richardson Foundation. And Charlie got the Sid Richardson Foundation to donate $5,000 to Larry's Kids. And y'all seen that I started advertising for the bicycle giveaway this year. It's December 13th. Farrington Field. Gates will open around 7 a.m. There's plenty of ways you can help. You can volunteer. You can buy bikes. Whatever. So I've got 8 people on the board. They'll be reaching out to you, or you can reach out to us. There's a website. You can donate year-round, larryskids.org or larryskids.com. We gave away 1,120 bikes last year, which brought our grand total in 38 years to 19,550. At $50 a piece, that's almost $1 million worth of bicycles. This year we'll go over 20,000 bicycles that I've given away, all new, to needy children here. Yes. Oh no, we need a lot of volunteers. We had probably 50 there last year. We need more than that. Okay, passport getaways. You want to go to Vegas? You want to take a cruise? Any of that stuff. Let Passport Getaways do the legwork. Then all you got to do is supply the money and go enjoy yourself. Optimist Club of Fort Worth. Jeff Norman will be with me live 8:30 Saturday morning. He's going to tell us all about Optimist Club. They're an international deal. It's not just Fort Worth, it's not Texas, not the United States. They're all over the world. And he's going to explain to us all of the great stuff they do for our youth. Let me move it. Okay. Here's another Rex Benson owned company, Old South Pancake House. When you pull into the Old South parking lot on South University, both of those restaurants are Rex's. Rex's Bar and Grill and Old South Pancake House. The one on University is 24/7. There's an Old South in Burleson, and they close at 9 or 10 at night. You can get breakfast all day long. The Old South has been in the Benson family since 1962. It originally started as Smitty's in 1958. 4 years later, Dave Benson, Rex's daddy, who I knew very well, purchased it. Jenny Stewart is our State Farm insurance lady. She's also running for City Council District 9 against Elizabeth Beck. That's the district I'm in right now. So if you don't use State Farm, if you use Farmers or Allstate or Freeway or whatever, call State Farm and get a quote. If you can save, I had a lady call me the other day and she said, well, that State Farm people, they only saved me $52 a month. I said, multiply that times 12. She said, oh yeah, I guess that is a lot of money. She switched. Jenny Stewart. Cross Electric, Brandon Cross. His company was nominated for DFW's favorites. I don't know how they ended up on that totem pole, but another family-owned business. If you need anything electrical, call Brandon Cross or Cross Electric. Don't mess with that electricity because I guarantee it can kill you. K-Ranch Roofing, there's Jorge Hernandez. If you think you've got wind damage, don't try to get a ladder and climb up there and try to do it yourself. You'll fall off and break your leg. Call one of those numbers, and Bree, the office manager, will set you up an appointment to have one of their specialists come out, and then they'll tell you if you have any roof damage, and there's no charge for that. All I ask is that you give our sponsors a chance. If you're going to go buy new insurance, at least give Jenny Stewart a call and see what their quote is. If you go somewhere else and it's cheaper, I understand. All I'm asking is that you stand up for our sponsors because they, as well as y'all, help keep this whole thing going. Fort Worth Lumber. They have been on board with me since many, many, many years. Active as a sponsor and very active in the bicycle giveaway. Dickie Carr. Come on, Internet. Dickie Carr owns Grateful for Your Trees. They do everything with trees. Cut them down, trim them. If you got a stump that you need ground down, they do all of that. And Dickie is Richard Carr's nephew. Richard is a very, very good friend of mine and good friend to all of y'all. In fact, when we made the bicycle giveaway last year, a non-profit, Richard Carr was the first person to write a $5,000 check for Larry's kids. Coburn's Catering. Steve Coburn. I've known the Coburns since the 60s. My uncle used to have a plant over there off North Main, and as a high school kid, I'd walk at lunch. I'd go over there on North Main, the same place they're at now. It was called Coburn's Cafeteria, and it was a full-service cafeteria. It was a great deal. Dickey Carr Sand and Gravel, that is now owned by Pat and Richard Carr. Great folks, very active in the community and the church. Just good all-around people. Bert Ladner, our friend Wes Williams is associated with that realtor, and Wes is also on the board of directors of Larry's Kids. A-Bird AC and Heating, that's Dub Peacock's company. So if you have any issues with your heat or air, the line is, they're starting to get a lot of calls, so call and make the appointment. Yes, Dub is one of the Peacock boys, the famous Peacock boys from Polly. Me and my brothers experienced the end of their fists several times back when we were younger. There was, I don't know how many. That one picture I posted, there was 7 of them. Mike and all of his brothers. And they were all fighters, believe me. Eric Walsh, another board of directors member on Larry's Kids. He's also a realtor. He's a good guy. He was brother-in-laws with John Green, who was a very dear friend of mine, and John passed away too many years ago. What a great guy. So Eric Walsh. Yellow Snake Horses, Brazos River Ranch. She's advertising. Now's spring break. You don't just have to take your kids or grandkids. You can go horseback riding down there. You get almost 2 hours for $75. You take I-20 down to the Millsap exit, about an hour away. You get out of the city, get out in the country. Country living's the best. And go down there and enjoy yourselves. You do not have to be a seasoned horseback rider. Okay, somebody's wanting to know. I did talk to Bud Kennedy yesterday. The question was, did Bonnie and Clyde actually stay at the Stockyards Hotel? My opinion only, no. And the reason I say that is Clyde always wanted to have his girl, his stolen V8, and his Browning automatic rifle right next to him. So if they ever did, which was very, very rare, stay in a motor lodge or something, that's what it was. It was one that you had a room, and next to it there was a carport, and you could back your car in there. The only time I know of for a fact that they stayed in anything above the first floor was in Joplin, Missouri, where they had the shootout and killed 1 or 2 law enforcement. But that was a garage apartment. It was over here again. His car was below him. I called yesterday to the Stockyards Hotel. I'm not trying to rain on their parade, but I asked, I said, is there any proof that they stayed there? She said, oh yeah, it's in the room. What could that be? She said they stayed there a lot. I know that's not true. So here's what Bud Kennedy said, and I'll give you I'll read you what he said. I'm going to post it today. We all know who Bud is. Okay. So I said, Bud, is there any proof that Bonnie and Clyde actually stayed at the Stockyards Hotel? His answer was, supposedly Clyde rented room 305. They were up on the 3rd floor. But Bonnie stayed across the street in the Oasis, so they couldn't get them both. I don't think they were, number one, smart enough to do that. That's the way Sue McCafferty heard it from the old timers, and she heard all the stories. They have the North Side Historical. They contribute to my museum. They've been here many times. No proof I know of. The owners of the Oasis building say that they have heard the same story. But here is the dispute. Bud's grandfather was Robert L. Chandler, and he owned and operated the Chandler Hotel in the 1920s. He bought it from Colonel Thainish. Colonel Thainish was a shipbuilder, and over there in the Stockyards area, he did a lot of stuff. He had a hotel, he had all kinds of stuff. So he said, and Bud says, my father, Robert L. Jr., was born in the hotel and lived there with his sisters for many years. He spent his career in the livestock exchange building as a buyer. He always laughed when hearing the Bonnie and Clyde story, and he said he had no recollection of that event ever happening. It makes great history, and it also brings lots of out-of-towners to be in the same room where Bonnie and Clyde slept. Let me tell you something, folks. They were not accomplished bank robbers. I put the number of banks they robbed at 12. One was as low. One had no money. The bank had failed. Second, from the lowest, they got $80. They never got a bank for not much over $10,000. So they stayed in that car. Clyde would drive for hours a day. If he thought the law was on him, he'd drive 1,000 miles in a day. Back then, those cars wouldn't go but about 60. So you can figure out how many hours he had to drive. Plus, Clyde's brother, Buck, his wife, Blanche, when she went to prison for aiding and abetting, she wrote her memoirs. When she got out, she stayed with an old friend of hers because Buck had died. And she left that memoirs there, and the lady didn't discover it till they were actually moving her into an old folks home. And one of her relatives, her son, I think, found it. And you can get it online, and it's Blanche's writing. And she complained about, we're always in this car. We have to pull over on the side of the road to use the bathroom. No taking baths. They were just not successful robbers, especially not on the same level as John Dillinger or any of those guys. Those guys that hit a bank and get $70,000 or $80,000. But one thing they're noted for is the majority of the people they killed were all police officers or law enforcement. Now, as far as Bonnie and Clyde being in Fort Worth, like I told Bud yesterday, the Hamiltons lived here. Floyd and Raymond Hamilton and their sister, Marjorie Maggie Hamilton, which my aunt, Ada Bilbrey, who was the first female serial killer in Texas, and Maggie Hamilton were good friends. Maggie ran a bar down on Exchange. And I really think they had a contest to see who could kill the most. My aunt killed 6, never went to trial. Maggie killed 3, and she actually spent 6 months in jail one time. The first person she killed, she was running her bar down on Exchange, and her husband came in and was real abusive, and nobody knows the real story, but she shot him and told the police that he was beating her up and this, that, and the other. They gave her her gun back. Not too long after that, hubby number 2, she shoots him with the same gun. They took the gun that time. She moved to Houston, ran a bar down there, and hubby 3, well, they actually weren't married, they were common law, shoots him 5 times in the stomach, and he dies 6 months later. She got 6 months in jail for it. So I'm not trying to deter people from going to the Stockyards. It's a great story. I wish there was some way to prove it. There's no newspaper articles that substantiate it. If there was a guest services book, it's pretty easy to write a name down there. You can go on Memories and go to the Spyglass and put Clyde Barrow in there. He was arrested here and fingerprinted, and it does on that fingerprint card, it has his signature. Of course, if there was a signature at the stockyards, they don't post it. So anyway, don't forget to use our sponsors. They help keep this thing going. Where are we going to eat Saturday? I forgot all about that. Jesus. Anybody got any ideas? I'll put it on the group here in about an hour. I need to call Old South and see if they're got a lot of stuff going on Saturday. Let me see here if I can. But I'll post it today. There's Pat and Richard Carr, 54 years together. I'm going to have to give them a shout out. Okay, let me see here if anybody's got any questions that I need to. Wasn't the accused murderer in Louisiana? Isn't that why he came to Fort Worth? Who are we talking about? What was the name of Fort Town, the name of the area before it was Fort Worth? It was not called Fort Town, Jeannie. A couple of books might mention that. It actually was no town when Press Farmer came here. It was inhabited by the Native American Indians. Press Farmer is recognized as the first. Press and his wife were the first citizens of what became Fort Worth. And the military installation, which was not a fort, it was a fort, but there was no stockade fence, was called Camp Worth. When Major Ripley Arnold and the 2nd Dragoons finished building all of the buildings, log cabin buildings, then the United States Army named this Fort Worth. But I have seen places that were called Fort Town. That might have been a slang for the citizenry here, but it was never written down as that. Brittany's in Tyler. Already had your first Whataburger. Good for you, girl. No, I was talking about Golden Corral. I don't know. Some people have an issue with eating where other people have gotten their food out of the same deal. So George is in, Aaron's in, Victoria is in. Bill, who are you talking about? Wasn't he accused of murder in Louisiana? Who is that? Are you talking about long-haired Jim Cartwright? Jim Cartwright was accused of murder and in jail and arrested in several places. Ken is in, Larry's in. Let me find the... Okay. I imagine you're talking about long-haired Jim Cartwright. He was just a thug. Like I say, he then decided to... He said he was in the private investigation, or his sign said Jim Cartwright Investigations. But what it was is he was selling protection rackets. And Luke Short, in fact, told him to start with, hey, I'm not going to rain on your parade and tell these other bar owners not to do it. And still, Cartwright still kept going after him. And that evening, he went by the White Elephant to have it out, and that was his last evening alive. Luke Short was a nationally known gambler. In fact, the city of Fort Worth had gone to Luke Short and said, hey, if you know any big gamblers in these other cow towns or California, you bring them in here, we'll give them a place to gamble out of, $3,500 upfront money, and not charge them any tax for first 2 years. And to my knowledge, Rowdy Jim, guy named Rowdy Jim, I think was his name. He had several saloons. He opened up one here. Luke Short had brought him in. But again, I don't know of anywhere it's written that it was called Fort Town. There's one book that is a very good book, and she names it Fort Town, but it was actually called Camp Worth. Of course, none of the citizenry could live inside the military installation. They did have a rope line, but not a stockade fence. They had a rope line where you tied your horses up. But and to my knowledge, there was 8 of them built from here to Mexico through West Texas. I think we're the only one that's still alive, that's still around. And that notion, that idea, it was supposedly a imaginary line, and the way the government sold it to the Indians was you stay on this side of this imaginary line and our settlers will stay on this side. Well, like every negotiation, every treaty they ever signed with the Native American Indians, we broke it. That particular treaty was signed in 1843, the Treaty of Bird's Fort, and it was signed about 8:30 in the morning. Before noon, we had already broke the treaty. Yeah, Brittany, I thought some people just don't like going to that. So I'm going to try to find some place different. There's nothing going on over here, so we can do something around here. Or we can go back to Zeke's, or I'll figure something out here and let y'all know. Don't forget, use our sponsors. When you use them, tell them you're a Fort Worth Memories member, or tell them Larry O'Neill. I have not heard when that. I was just asked, when are they going to tear down the Montgomery Street Antiques? I don't know, but like I've said many times, we all should have known that was coming. You've got Dickies Arena there, and there's no hotel close. In fact, if I was that Purvis Real Estate, there's a boot company in there, there's a little bitty restaurant or a cafe, vending nut, I'd be looking for maybe a backup place, because they're going to put more. Christ Chapel, they won't get them out of there, but they can get the rest of them. There's a little old gas station convenience store. It's got the airplane. They fix phones and electronic stuff. I would not think that they'd be there very long. Okay, boys and girls, don't forget, be nice to your neighbors, and go through your phone contacts. If you've got a family member that you hadn't talked to, that y'all are estranged, patch it up. It's not worth it. I will be back probably in a couple of hours. I'm trying to think what else. Boy, our track and field kids are doing great. We got a bunch of good high school athletes from this area, and communities fairly close. There was some community where they set a national record. I was scanning it this morning. Brittany, you're not going to make it to, you got to go back to New Jersey? bike giveaway. This is the 39th year, and to date we've given away 19,550 new bicycles plus toys. So this year we'll go over 20,000. That's a lot of bicycles. When I started this thing 39 years ago, I had no idea I'd still be doing it 39 years later. Okay, boys and girls, I gotta go. If you go out this morning, put a jacket on or a little windbreaker, because it's gonna warm up. Hold on just a second. Okay, talk to y'all a little bit later.